We played a fun game in our training for weekend 6 called Zombie Games. And you can actually call this, fix the misaligned person or wonky yogi exercise or something like that. But the name Zombie Games is kind of fun and sort of gives you this like that you're playing a game for Halloween or something like that. So it's not a Halloween thing. In fact, it's actually something that I practiced in my 200-hour training many years ago, and also I brought to every single training, and it ends up being really fun. It's something that you would bring in halfway through, or at least halfway through, if not towards the end of the training, because by this point you should know the poses, you should know how to teach them, you should know what to look for when it comes to misalignments and know how to correct them. So we've gone through all the poses and now we're going into more practice teaching. This one's super fun and everyone typically has a really great time with it. So here's how it works. We have a group of yoga teacher trainees. So we had 9, and I was a student as well, and we had assistant as a student as well. So you guys all if you're watching this as a recap from the training, you know how this went. So you don't really even have to watch this video because you practiced it and you know it. So the Zombie Games goes like this. One person is the teacher. So you step out of the room, out of the studio, and you just wait. You actually have to pick a pose, so it might be triangle pose, side angle, plank, up dog, whatever it is, you know what the pose is. So the teacher that stepped out is now thinking on, okay, I have, say, crescent lunge. I have crescent lunge, so that means like, how can I walk in teaching that pose? Even though when they walk back in, everyone should be in that pose already. The people in the room, the classroom, everyone needs to have very perfect alignment in that pose. Crescent lunge pose, perfect alignment. Joints stacked, shoulders over hips, wherever your hands are, everything has to be perfect except for one person or 2. Well, just for this example, say one person is a zombie, meaning they have a super misaligned body shape where they could hurt themselves, something that we want to fix so that in time they're not chronically injured. So that might be like in a crescent lunge, it might be your knee is way far forward over your toes, or hunching the shoulders a lot because that can cause tension, or something that's super obvious. And just one thing that this teacher, once they walk back in, will be able to spot, and they have to correct it verbally, correct it with a verbal cue without embarrassing the student who is the zombie, because you don't want to go into a class and be like, Sarah, your pose is awful, or that you're way off on that, because it can be, you don't want to embarrass new students and make them feel super shamed in the pose that they're in because they don't know. So how can we say things in a way addressing the entire class to make sure that, that one person maybe you spotted is doing well? So thinking of those words. And this can get a little bit silly sometimes because you have someone exaggerating, but that's kind of the point of it too, is to be able for the teacher to come in and scan the room and notice if there is misalignments or anything that could be unsafe. It's your job as yoga teachers to keep students safe. So this is a great game for that. And as the group doing the one person or 2 doing the zombie pose, make sure that whatever you're doing is not going to hurt you. So it's not something you do regularly and you're okay, whether it's knee over ankle or hyperextending or something like that. Once in a while, keep yourself safe. So if you do have bad knees, you are not going to be the one being the zombie pushing your knee forward. It's the chronic overuse of that type of movement that will cause the injury for someone that's usually healthy. But if you do have an injury or something that you have to be mindful of, don't try. This is not your time to go above and beyond and be a wonky zombie for the sake of it, because we don't want to get hurt. So whatever it is, shoulders hunch, knee forward or open, or like in a warrior 2, you've got the opposite foot forward. You can even do something fun like that where it's not dangerous, it's just not what we're in. Or maybe you're in a totally different pose. For example, triangle pose, someone's bending their knee and they're actually in side angle instead. So how would you correct that verbally? So the teacher would walk in and he or she needs to scan the room and acknowledge and notice the zombie without calling them out, like I said. And I need to see, as a trainer, I need to see that they acknowledge and know who that person was, so that they're not just saying a bunch of cues in hopes that everyone's going to hear them and they're going to fix it. So they need to acknowledge who that is and was, and then say some cues or words or directions in a way that is addressing the entire class. And once they say the correction, the zombie moves into correct alignment and their turn is over. The next person steps out, picks a pose, comes back in when we're ready with their zombie or two, and they verbally correct once they acknowledge and notice that zombie. And it kind of goes over and over like that. So once they verbally correct without touching, so verbal cues only, verbally correct, or even demoing would be fine too, but verbally correct and demo without touching. Once they do it, once they say it, the zombie again goes into correct alignment, all is good. We got into the next stage after that. This is as if people aren't able to hear your cues or they don't understand. So the next level was very similar concept. You pick one, this time only one zombie that's super misaligned, and they'd walk in, have to acknowledge and notice who it was, and then they'd have to say the same cue to fix it in 3 different ways. So if it was a low lunge, the first thing they would say is, okay, there's a tendency to bring your knee over your toe, so let's just make sure the knee is directly stacked over the ankle. But they didn't hear that. So, all right, everybody shift their weight back slightly so that more of your weight's in the heel rather than the toes of your foot. Okay, they didn't hear that, and you have to try one more time, say a third cue that finally that person that's out of alignment hears, or maybe it's a demo or you get up next to them and say, hey, could you try to bring your knee back? So 3 different ways in order to fix that person. And there's so much more you could add to this, but that's the basic concept of zombie games, of the zombie game for yoga teacher trainees, to get used to fixing and correcting misalignments without going up and feeling like you have to touch people. So making sure that we become master communicators with our verbal cues and our words that we're using as teachers to keep people safe, rather than feeling we always have to go up and touch people, right? Because the words that we are saying are important and can be very, very effective if done correctly and in a loving way, I suppose. So zombie games, awesome. Thank you for playing, and we will bring that back again into our training a couple more times as we move through the training. And what I did was I just had little note cards that I wrote different poses on and had someone randomly pick them. So that worked, or you could just have a list and go down the list. But we had everybody go through this, and it took a while to get through. And some people got it right away, the poses right away. Depends on the pose, depends on misalignment. Some people it was quick, for some it took a little bit longer. So again, great practice, a great practice technique, and a great way to allow yoga teacher trainee to think a little bit more and really find words that they could say. It's going to be easier when you're in an actual class because you won't have crazy zombies, but you never know. But it does get easier in an actual class because here we're really setting up that people aren't hearing you, and it's all your peers. So it can be a little bit more nerve-wracking around all your peers when you know what you should be doing compared to in an actual class where the students maybe don't know quite as much. All right, that's it for that recap. I will be coming back for another video very shortly.